everybody. As Matt said, I'm Cheyenne Keating. I currently work in marketing at Chang Industrial. Very honored to moderate this panel of exceptional women, and it has just been a pleasure getting to know each of you, and I'm so excited for each of you to get to know them as well. They each bring a unique viewpoint and experience expertise to venture funding and early stage investment, whether it's from the investing side, the fundraising side, commercial banking side, etc. So I'm thrilled for this. I hope you are too. Let's go ahead and start with introductions. If you want to just give your name, your role, and your background in early stage investment / venture. We can start with Julie and work our way down.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Juliana Iarossi. This is how I introduce myself to my students. I teach at the University of South Carolina. I teach corporate strategy, entrepreneurship innovation, entrepreneurial finance, and I also teach in the engineering school and a Master of Science in Technology Innovation program that I helped develop. So I've been doing that for the past 10 years. But that part of my life that is focused on innovation strategy, which is what entrepreneurship is all about, is also, there's a parallel path where I am an angel investor, been angel investor for about 10 years. Invested with a number of different angel groups, now solely with Venture South. I'm also on the board of Venture South. I'm also on the board of another early stage venture organization, SC Launch, which is in South Carolina. We are tasked with investing in early stage life sciences and technology companies in the state of South Carolina. But how I got to this place was I started my career as an engineer with a startup organization before it was cool to do that. It was a company started by a group of retired NASA engineers that had really big ideas. And what I realized early on was that it took much more than just being the smartest technology people in the world, and these people were that I worked for, but they didn't have the business knowledge. And so I quickly saw the demise of what could have been really great company. Went to get my MBA, fell in love with finance, and ended up spending about 20 plus years in commercial banking, investment banking for most of the major commercial banks and investment banks in the US, spending my time driving capital to companies who are growing, who are acquiring companies, who are turning around. So that all kind of led into this really hyper focus on early stage companies, and so that's where I am now, and I love being part of helping to build and grow these companies in any way that I can.
Hi, I'm Janet Wylie.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm Janet Wylie. I am currently working with Chang Industrial, but prior to that, I was an engineer from Georgia Tech. And started my career in Exxon in the Gulf of Mexico as the first woman out there. So Trish and I have the oil fields in our common background. And went up from there and to different companies, most notably Boeing and Xerox, and where I was actually more the marketing person. And I did, Xerox actually sent me to University of Chicago to get my MBA. So that was fun, except for the winter. So, because I'm a Florida girl, I grew up here. And anyway, so I was in the technology space for 35 years, and I had two companies that I was CEO of that I had to fundraise for. And one was very small, probably 12 people. They were both software. And if any of you are software CEOs, you know that software companies suck money because you have so much development before you have a product to sell. So unless you're lucky enough to get someone who wants to be a pilot customer and actually write a check, you're looking for money for a lot of cycles and a long time. So that was the small one. The second one was much larger, and we did engine manufacturing, and we thought we were going to go public in 2006, and our clients were automotive and aerospace because we designed their engine. If you remember 2006, 2008, automotive crashed, aerospace crashed. So we ended up not having the happy ending that we thought we were going to have, but we did end up we raised some capital from our existing investors, and then we ended up getting purchased by Dassault. And so that was sort of a happy ending. Not as happy as we thought it was going to be, but it was a happy ending. But so why I'm here is because I've lived the struggle. You know, I lived the struggle of being early stage and not having two nickels to rub together and doing cash flow and going, we're going to run out of money like a month from now. And so I have a lot of empathy, and I do have experience raising money.
Great. So Wine's the banker here. So, yeah, I know, you need the banker. So I'm Debbie Buckland, and I feel like I'm a native Jacksonvillian. I came here in 1998. So that makes me a native, right? I can do Duval Cry and the whole shebang. So I grew up in East Tennessee, and I graduated from college in 1979, and my first job in banking and finance was as a teller, and that was about 43 years ago. So my entire career I've spent serving the small business, business banking, corporate banking, middle market, however you would define it, in an institutional regulated setting of a bank. My career was predominantly at SunTrust. I ended it at BB&T, and you know the two banks merged a few years ago, and my most recent job was market president for Truist, which was the merged bank of the two. So in my work over the years, and I know there are a couple of bankers here, we've heard from one already, and you've got one on the agenda tomorrow, we worked with companies who crested the threshold of cash flow positive. And you know cash is king. So we're an important part of the capital stack and the health and growth of any company, especially as they move to the public markets. And I'm glad to be here among these formidable panelists.
Hi guys, thank you very much for being here. This is really exciting to see this happening locally. My name is Trish Skoglund. I'm a director of corporate development in Crowley, local maritime company. I'm also here supported by my innovation team because for us, you can't do corporate venture investing without innovation. So I actually have been in Jacksonville just about 2 years now. I come from Alaska, where I worked for BP in the upstream oil and gas industry. I have a business background, so I am deep into operations, maintenance, budgets, project management, continuously being surrounded by engineers, so I feel very much at home up here. But I made the switch for moving into corporate development, corporate venture investing, M&A about 2 years ago when Crowley decided to open up an in-house investment arm. In those last 2 years, and I just was talking to Matt at the video, is Crowley has actually invested in 8 startups. We are very active in the innovation space. We've even looked with a couple of Jacksonville startup companies here locally to do innovation, to do corporate venture investing in them. And so while it's not very well known, Crowley is very active in both innovation and we do manage a fund for early stage startup investing. We are active with how does this help us reach our net zero goal by 2050, but also how does it help small stage startups get into SME knowledge that a company like Crowley, who's been around for 130 years, can give some of these startups. We're working with an early stage onboard carbon capture company right now who we're actually allowing them to test their product on our vessel. And so our investment in them was very strategic. So happy to be here, and thank you guys for coming. This is really couldn't be done without you.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys. So we will start. We'll start down at Trish and work our way back. What do you think is maybe the single most important piece of advice for an early stage company to know as they start seeking investment?
Find the money.
Mic drop.
No, I mean, I think it's important. There's 2 things that I look for in any early stage startup is your management team. How far are you willing to go to make this a success, right? Every founder will tell you it's bumps and bruises along the ways, and it's not what they thought it would be, and there's turns as the market tells them they want something else for their product. But I think it's how far are you willing to go to make this a success along with your team. The management team is key to me. And then the other thing is when you do look for money, look for people who can help you. Not only can they write checks, but can they give you that strategic SME knowledge? Or can they give you, I've talked a lot, I've been to so many conferences, even just this year, I think I've been to 13 alone nationally. And it's interesting to see the companies that were at either seed or Series A and are now looking to raise their next fund are looking for the VCs that can help them make that transition, right? A founder can be friends and family stage, no big deal. He's operating out of his garage. But to then move into where you now have 50, 100 employees, that's a different level, let alone 500 employees, 5,000 employees, hopefully one day 50,000 employees. So I think it's be strategic about who you partner with as your management team and be strategic who you partnership with the money.
Awesome. Debbie?
Yeah, so I would add that a lot of the early second stage companies that we worked with in the banking space, they were graduating from entrepreneurial to, it's like you wear a different hat when you get to that stage. And so many of the business owners weren't clear in their minds around the differences between equity risk and debt risk. And I think in banking in particular, you can't go to a bank until you have a primary source of repayment to pay the loan back. That's positive and discretionary cash flow. And then in banking, because it's regulated, a secondary source of repayment or asset support for it. So I would agree with everything you said. Surrounding yourself with good advisors, and in particular, a good CPA and someone, if you don't have a finance background, get somebody on your team who has one and understands the numbers and can help you with that part of the business.
Did it?
I agree with everything they said, and I want to add, since I'm the one who was scratching and clawing for money for years, I want to share that pain with you. The thing that we saw when we talked to investors about investing in our companies, here's what they wanted. They definitely cared, number one, about the management team. Can they forecast? Can they sell? Can they create a product? So those are the things they look, and are they credible? Do they make the forecast? You know, everybody can forecast, but do you make your forecast? So that's that credibility. So they want a credible management team. They also want a stable product, and they want a client base. Because if you don't have a client base or you don't have a really solid, good pipeline, where are you going to get that revenue, to pay back your debt or your equity? So those are the things primarily. Again, management team, sound financials, a working product, and a good pitch book. That's the other thing. The good pitch book is really important. Yeah, that is, again, from the end of the one who was scratching and clawing, trying to run a company while we're looking for money, while we're keeping the clients going. So.
Awesome, Janet. You want to close us out for the question, Julie?
Yes, so I'm going to echo I'm going to go ahead and affirm everything that they said. There are a couple other things I want to throw out there. So advice to startup. First thing, I usually ask startups because they'll come to me saying, can you help me with fundraising? Can you help me figure out who we should be talking to? The first thing I ask them is, do you really need outside money? Because there are certain business models that are where you may not actually need it. And the reason I say this is once you take outside money, you've got now somebody closer to you than your spouse, probably, right? There's somebody checking over your shoulder. How many sales did we do today? How'd the calls go? What does the pipeline look like, right? How does that new hire working? So you've got to, that's usually the very first thing. I'm like, take a step back. Do you really, really, really need this? Don't do it just because it seems cool and fun, because it's not fun. But anybody who's been through that, it's a lot of hard work. But the next thing is, if you say, yes, I do need this, my business model does require a lot of capital, much more than I've got in my wallet. And so what you need to do is be very intentional. And you need to do your homework on investors. What geography do certain investors invest in? What sectors are they investing in? What business models are they investing in? What else can they bring? And what stage of development? You need to do a lot of homework to make sure you're talking to the right people. And then, what you need to do is make sure, and this goes in line with having a good pitch book, but goes back to a discussion that Trish and I had a couple months back, is often sometimes the reason why you get turned away is the failure of the narrative. That was your quote that I loved, is not being able to articulate clearly what is your business model? Who is your customer? And, what is your strategy to get from point A to point B? And along with that is you've got to have evidence. You can't don't go out looking for money if it's just a basket of assumptions. We want to see that you have started to validate that your assumptions were right, or if they were wrong, that you already made those modifications, that you are starting to de-risk your company. And so I'll just give a story. I have my students help with Venture South with the due diligence. And so they get a real eye-opening experience in really what this is all about. They see both sides of the table. And a couple of them sat in on our most recent venture member meeting, and they saw 2 pitches. And they all said, we debrief in class, and they all pointed out that one company that pitched had a bunch of data, and their data from their market, and they could really articulate who was their customer and where was the friction in the customer journey that caused this need. And the other one, they said, there was no data. It was a nice story, and I can understand it, but it wasn't believable because there was no data yet. They hadn't given us any idea that and proven that there's a customer out there that really wants or needs or could benefit from what they were offering. So,
yeah, great example. So kind of going off of the advice you just gave to early stage companies, what, from your perspective, makes a company stand out for selection for funding? Yes.
Oh, okay,
you work
great.
your way back down.
This is always dangerous. I'm a mic hog, so I'm used to standing in front of students for 3 hours without needing a bathroom break or a breath. So this is scary. You never want to put a mic in my hand. So I think it's a lot of what I talked about, having that evidence, having that, you've got to understand as a startup what makes you investable, but at the same time for investors, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, what you're looking for is some evidence. And being able to succinctly articulate what your company does and who specifically. There are a lot of times, and maybe you guys have seen this, where after a pitch, everybody is looking at you like, what are they? Who are they? What do they do? I don't get it. I'm not quite sure. And when you keep pushing and pushing to understand, they're not able to. And I understand it. Maybe that they're too early on, and they're still trying to answer those questions. So for the area that I'm, at the level and stage of development I'm investing in, I really want to hear some clarity, knowing certainly, well, in a couple of years it's going to be a completely different company, but I want to know now and have that confidence that they know where they're going, so I know what my money is going into, and so having that evidence. And also just keeping in mind that in the first minute, you got to pull on our heart, our mind, our wallet, hopefully all 3. Because if you're don't do, and I teach my students this too, don't do the slow reveal. That's great for mystery novels and things like that. But for all of you in business, what do? We look to the answer at the end. It's the same with start. It's like give the answer right up front. Otherwise, I start putting together my grocery list on my, and so my grocery list on my computer. I'm like, you lost me here. So, which means the purse gets zipped up with the wallet in it, and and so.
That's a Shark Tank moment right there.
I hope no one ever did their grocery list while I was pitching. That's really sad. So I would say from our perspective of what got people's attention was a unique product that fills a need. And the proof of this is customers. Because every time that we ever met with the VC, we had to show them our customer list, and we had to show them our pipelines. And then, so that leads into the credible pipeline and credible financials. Because if you can't forecast during however long it takes you to raise money, that's not credible. That's not the tell for a good management team. So you need to be able to forecast and believable financials and believable forecast. Because trust me, it's not a quick process, and so they'll be able to see after a month, did you meet last month's numbers? No, why not? Oh, well, it slipped. It slipped. And that's not a good answer to someone who's trying to hold you accountable.
Yeah, I would add to that. I was going to say ability to prove out your performance to projections. So especially in the context of thinking about communication with a debt provider, it's the same with an equity provider. It's the same conversation. So I would say that is critically important to maintain that information, be able to prove it out to your stakeholders, your investors, debt and equity. And I would add communication, which you both affirm that. It's the open communication. You want the bathwater and the baby. So.
Yeah, it's funny. Julie and I had met for coffee at Southern Grounds a couple weeks ago, and I just was like, I'm the one in the meeting who's just like, I'm sorry, I might be the dumb one in the room, but what the heck do you do? And it's so many times I walk out of pitches, I still have no idea what that company does, and I actually don't think the founder does either, to be honest. And also, I am a little critical because I do come from the business background. I used to have to budget for a $500 million company on my P&L, so I can look at your forecast and call BS in 2 seconds flat, and then ask you to back it up. So, not having that investment background actually can work to my advantage, but it also can not work to yours if you really don't understand your forecast. The other thing I would say, so from my own personal venture investing, is I'm looking for how successful can you get out of this company? What's your exit plan? Are we 5 years out? Are we 7 to 10 years out? Do you even think you can exit? I want my money back. I want to know that you can have a successful exit. And I will say from Crowley's perspective, from a corporate strategic perspective, we're looking for a company that can truly partner with us. Is we know what we have in terms of a 130-year-old company that has deep roots in the maritime and transportation company. We also know we're a corporation. We move at a much different pace than a startup does. We want to know that you can still partner with our company, but keep the competitive edge that you have, right? There's a reason that big corporations need early stage companies. They can move faster, they can think faster, they're more innovative, they can get products to market quicker, they can make a bigger impact. That's what we're looking for when we look at corporate and early stage startup partnerships.
Beautiful. And that advice doesn't even just go to the entrepreneurs in the room, but also for investors, what to look for. So that brings me to my final question before we open up for audience Q&A and have a more interactive type of panel here. But specifically, Trish and Julie, what advice would you give to someone who wants to begin angel investing? Yeah, you can begin.
Okay. So just to clarify, you guys, I actually have had a house here in St. Johns County. I know everybody talks Duval here, but I'm on, I'm your neighbor, right? So for probably 9 years now. My husband retired before I did and is down here because the golf is better than Columbia, South Carolina. So that's that's why I am here.
We have
and that's
universities
what I
here
love.
too.
I know. So one of the things when you're starting out thinking about angel investing is you've got to really do some deep reflection and figure out what is it that you want to get out of this. Are you investing because you want to grow the geographic region? Or is there a certain product or service category or a certain industry that maybe you have experience in that you want to see really, come to fruition and become now a product that's out in the market being used? It could be a certain problem that really tugs at you that you think needs to be solved, or frustrations you had in your company with manual processes, whatever it is. You've got to figure out what it is what's your theme here. And then you have to decide, do you want to be passive or active? So do you just want to give your money and let people run with it, invest in it? Or do you actually want to have a say in who gets investment and a say on helping them with their strategic direction on the board? Do you want to, what is it that you want to do in this? Again, is it just another asset class that you're investing in? Or is this something that you really want to have a hand in as an investor? And so that's the other decision. And you gotta, because this is really risky and you're gonna lose money, you've got to figure out how much is it that you want to put at risk, right? I mean, my husband and I sat down and we said, okay, X number of dollars. He said, okay, this is your thing, you do it. And he said, we hope at the end that there's a lot more than what we originally invested in. But along that road, it's a bumpy road. There are going to be total losses, and there are going to be the 3 to 4 time gains, and then there are going to be those we just squeak out at what our original cost of capital was. So you want to think about that, and then you want to think what stage of development. So the older I get, and I tell my students, and they believe me when I say, oh, I graduated from college 100 years ago. I mean, it's been almost a half a century ago, right? But I think they believe me, so, because they don't have any context of, I'm standing up there, gray hair, I'm old, right? So what I've done, the older I've gotten, I want to invest in companies a little bit further along and a little bit further along. And I will never forget the words that when I was in a meeting with some fellow investors at Venture South, one of the other members said, he said, I really want to exit before I die. and I was like, actually, that's now what I have to put in our little family investment thing, is we actually want to be able to invest in companies where we can see an investment before, while we're still alive, right? That we're not just passing it on to our kids. And so also the other thing is just to plan how much you want to put at risk in each company. And what my recommendation is never put it all in at once, because there's always multiple rounds. There's never one round, right? You want to put a little bit in, see how they're doing. Are they learning? Are things really, are they looking good? Then the next round, put the rest of it in, or, just kind of plan that way. So that's sort of how I think about it, and I know a number of other angels kind of think about it that way also.
Awesome. Anything to add, Trish?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that your why is the first step. Why do you want to get into this? It is very risky. The payout doesn't always happen, and if it does, it might not happen for your lifetime. So I think your why, and then your how, right? There's local organizations like Venture South where you can get in. I just happen to have a friends and family present me with my first investment opportunity, which is how I got into it. And so I think it's how you do it. It's just going to be, do you want to be part of an angel community that kind of looks at deals together where you can learn from other investors? Even just Julie and I have just met a couple times, but I'm already learning from her and how she thinks about due diligence. How does she think about how this investment will pan out, right? Like she said, she might not put everything into one round. I didn't learn that until I just attended a venture capital class as part of my Wharton education, where it was like, oh, right, my equity just got diluted now on the second round, right? And so, you also have to realize this isn't a one time. If they have 4 more rounds, your 10% just became 0.01%, depending on the size of the round. So I think, the same thing I recommend for people on their pitches, who, why, when, where, and how. Same thing I recommend for if you want to get started, start with your why, start with the how, and then start with the what. How much do you really want to risk? Because this is risky, but I also, if you're looking at from portfolio diversification, why not have money in something like this that has a big impact? I mean, we really are helping the largest influencers in the business space. So,
awesome. Thank you, guys. All right, now we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Yes. We got one right there, Solomon.
So what are the biggest challenges that you guys have faced as women within finance and VC?
Debbie, do you want to speak to that?
I'd like to speak to that.
All right, Janet, go ahead.
You hit my hot button. I don't think that being a woman has had any impact on my career whatsoever, other than going offshore when they didn't have places for women to sleep, other than that. But I think the challenges are the challenges. They're business challenges, and there are people challenges, and maybe women have an advantage in that because women tend to be, now I sound sad, women tend to be more intuitive or read people or spend more time trying to read people. And so I never thought of it as a challenge. I always thought it as an advantage. So, but I mean, everybody who raises money, raising money is hard. I mean, raising money is hard. I don't know how else to say that. You know, cash gone, game over. So you have to do it, you know, and sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's unpleasant, but I don't think that changes by gender. I think it's hard no matter who does it.
So I'll tell you a funny story. This is true. I was trying to correlate it to the year. This would have been probably 1981 or 2. And I was living in a beautiful town in Southwest Virginia, and our local Chamber of Commerce had a membership drive every year. And as a banker, the expectation was that we would sell chamber memberships. And I sold more than anybody. And the prize for the winning team and all the people who participated was a golf outing at the homestead. But they didn't allow women. Yeah, so I didn't get to go. Okay, so I agree that, I mean, you can look at the horsepower on this panel and see that we don't need any help. And is Dr. Nick still here? There he is, right there. He said it this morning. He said, "I don't need." What did you say? I don't need you to give me nothing. Just open the door and I'll get it myself. Okay. So in Northeast Florida, and all of us are data geeks. We're all data geeks and have relied on data. In Northeast Florida, and this troubles me, in Northeast Florida, we have the data that we got 3.5 years ago with UNF and the Center for Women's Business Research. So I didn't make this up. Jean will affirm it. So we're, as women, still earning only 76 cents for every dollar that men earn. We're underrepresented in management and C-suite. We rank 45th in the major markets in the United States. We're underrepresented in STEM. Like 3 out of 20 STEM jobs are women, and we fall out. And so I think, for me, I'm committed to changing that narrative, and I think we heard from a number of the speakers this morning about investment and innovation in understanding why women fall out. Because we can't win in Northeast Florida. We can't have the most job-friendly economy here unless we win talent. And women are 54% of the talent pool here. And so what's up with that? We can do better. And for all the struggles that women have, our friends of color have it infinitely worse. And there's data for that too. But I want to applaud you, Matt, and your team, Cheyenne, for conceiving the agenda here around innovation and collaboration. I think the data also shows that women are more collaborative in their leadership styles. They're more willing to call a bullshit when they see it. It's like if I can't explain it to my grandmother, you're not getting my $1 million, sorry. Explain it to my grandmother and maybe we'll talk. But that's like my 2 cents on that. So sorry, I got off topic.
Can I add one more thing real quick? So the other thing I would say is that, because I managed a group of like 7,000 people, and I will tell you, one of the reasons why women didn't get as big a raises as men is the men would come in, like knock your door down and demand it, and the women didn't do that. And so one time I doubled a woman's salary because she deserved it, and she was absolutely blown away. But I was just trying to put her where she belonged in the pecking order. But I encourage women to ask for what you want.
And I'll just finish out this question with, for me, it actually starts at a much earlier age. I don't think that as a society we tell little girls about entrepreneurship enough. I think men just, they'll kind of just go and test out an idea and it turns into a company. I have a real big passion for teaching kids of both girls and boys about entrepreneurship and financial literacy. I sit on the local board of junior achievement here because I think we do need to teach kids that college isn't the answer for everyone, that entrepreneurship actually is a legit career pathway and that there are opportunities. And to your point, Debbie, is I think influencing the kids here in Northeast Florida is where it's going to make a difference, right? Is we need to give them the options of entrepreneurship, of innovation. And even if they work for a company like Crowley and they're on the innovation side, they're still working with entrepreneurship mindset. And that's really, for me, it starts with what we're teaching kids.
Yeah, that's great. Any other questions?
Yeah. My name is Derek. I'm glad to be here, and it's very interesting to hear all your different stories. I guess my question is directly to you, Trish. Have you done any mergers and acquisitions with, like, say, a business person comes in, they bring in some type of resources or network where they can do a deal $0 out of their pocket on an acquisition of a different business?
Let me ask a clarifying, what are they bringing into the deal?
Let's say they're bringing in partners that can make whatever company they're looking at more profitable.
Yeah, I would say that I haven't professionally done that, but I do see the need, especially as in the last 2 years, business has accelerated by a minimum of 5 years. Honestly, I think more and more companies need partners to come in with innovative connections, innovative partnerships to do deals differently. I mean, I do think you do see M&A different now than you did even 2 years ago. Thank you.
All right, next question.
So you see an influx of younger people, and you were talking about grit earlier, being one of the most important things that you can teach young people in business. What would be another leadership attribute, trait that you would recommend for the younger group of people and for women in business?
Younger people, so.
Mike.
Sorry. Don't be afraid to try anything. I was the first woman engineer out in the Gulf of Mexico, and I didn't know they didn't have ladies' rooms. So that was a try thing that was like, whoa, okay, I'm not sure that was a good idea. But I'd say don't be willing to try everything, and do not be afraid to fail, because you will fail. It's okay. It is okay. So that's the main thing. And women, again, I think I was fortunate in that when I went to school in Duval County, believe it or not, before college, and I was fortunate enough to have a lot of teachers who encouraged me and said, you can do anything. You can do anything. And so that was good. I mean, I was very fortunate to have that. But I think encouragement is really good. And I think if you're in a position to encourage others, that's very good. But I was fortunate because I do know that some women are not encouraged, and some girls in school, especially in the STEM classes, that they get discouraged. They have people who try and discourage them. And I would say, figure out what you want to do it, and don't be afraid to fail.
So I would echo what you say, because that's so important. Is having that perseverance to do it, but also to know when maybe this isn't my path, maybe I should change my path. But one of the things that is really helpful, I don't care if you're a man or woman, is being a really good team player, realizing the strengths in all the people around you, and being focused on helping to lift the people around you up also. And, we were all talking online, I guess. And out of the 3 times I was thrown under the bus by people in my career, 2 of them were women, right? So women don't have they're not always the best leaders. It's, it's coming down to this person, and really recognizing and helping and lifting up, and then being a great problem solver. Being somebody who you see a problem, and don't run from it. This is something I love to do is there's a problem. Okay, let's figure out who can we get around. Let's go ahead and fix this. Who knows? None of us has all the answers. Who can we bring together and fix this problem? And, and I think that, that works. I'm going to just say something again about our education system is by and large failing almost everybody, men and women. And I've had a son and a daughter, and so I've seen that. But I see at the college level, with women, I see women self-selecting out of finance, out of technology, engineering classes. When I was in the discipline engineering I was in, about almost half of our class was women. And I think that's not the same now. When I see in finance classes, I don't see as many women. In my master's, my PMBA classes, it's mostly men in my classes. So what you've got to do is focus on investing in your, in yourself, in your knowledge, and having that extra knowledge so when that problem comes up, you're ready to be there and put together that team to solve that problem. So.
I would say one thing for the audience going on that is be willing to share your career with people. Tell people what you do. What's your aspect of venture investing? How does it look from the investor seat? How does it look from the founder seat, right? Not everybody knows what everybody does, and how does that look from a career perspective, but also how does it look into venture funding, right? So what is the mindset of an investor, and what is the mindset of a founder? And I think if we can come together as a team, as Julie says, is rising tides float all boats. And so I think if you can help each other on a team, you can learn what's in it for you and how do I help you, and we'll all rise together. So that would be my ask for the audience.
I don't know who asked the question. That last question was what leadership trait? I would just add one thing, and then I want to build on something that Trish pointed out and all of you have affirmed. So I would say vulnerability, and especially for the men in the room. There are more men in here today than women. And I would say over the years, most of my team were men. In the commercial banking space, certainly, in the earlier years of my career, were mostly men. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And I think, in my experience, women are more willing to be vulnerable than men. And if you men can conquer that, it's powerful. The other thing I would say, to your point, it's what do they say, commerce without margin is a hobby. And women choose, you look at the data there, they choose historically under-yielding investments, and that can be for a different set of reasons, but entrepreneurial and financial literacy education can help inform those decisions. And you might as well be in a high-margin business as a low-margin business, right? Or a high-paying career as a low-paying career. So at the end of the day, the way our economy keeps score is with money, and the way we improve things around us is by investing our money in things that are important. And so I think we're out of time. Yeah. So I'll stop.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm so grateful to have heard your insights, and I'm sure you all are too. Yeah, thank you.